Congratulations, you've just found the number one over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert and the founder of the Silver Edge, and I am on a mission to help men and women just like you build lean, strong, healthy, capable bodies they love for the rest of their lives. All right, people, today we've got a fun and powerful conversation lined up, one that might just change the way you think about life, death, purpose, and what really matters. My guest today is Karen Salmansohn. She's a best-selling author, a leading behavioral change expert, and an absolute master at blending research-backed psychology with bold humor and real-world wisdom. Karen sold over 2 million books and courses. She's been featured on things like Oprah and Psychology Today. And in today's episode, she introduces us to the idea of moving from beast mode, where it's all about grinding, hustling, and chasing achievement, to best mode, where we're fully awake, purpose-driven, and focused on creating a life we truly love. We talk about the surprising power of mortality awareness, how to build your to-die list, yeah, you heard that right, and why writing your own eulogy might just be the best life hack you've never tried. This one's insightful, inspiring, and packed with actionable wisdom, so whip up your protein smoothie and let's meet Karen.
I have two stories. I have the funny, quippy version, and then I have the poignant, heartfelt version. I'll start with the quippy. I say that I didn't write this book because I had a near-death experience. I had what I call a near-life experience, which if you never heard of that, it's okay because I made it up.
Right. Love it.
But I think everybody will relate to it because I'm not the only one who's had a near-life experience. A near-life experience is when you're on your phone so much that you're not really fully in life, or you're distracted, thinking, worrying about the future, or regretting something from the past. So instead of being in your life, you're near life, you're kind of life adjacent. And it's also called autopilot mode. A lot of people are in autopilot mode. They're not fully present in their life. And I realized that I was having a near life experience when ... I came to the poignant, more heartfelt part of this, which is when my dad passed away. So, and when he passed away, it was a big wake-up call. I mean, a lot of these things that are corny to say are corny, but they're true, and it kind of shook me awake out of my near-life experience, because I realized that we walk around knowing we're going to die someday, but then we stuff this down and we don't think about it. I mean, death denial is real. I mean, there's all kinds of studies about this with terror management and all these reasons why we try not to think about death. But when somebody close to us passes away, it wakes us up. And for me, it made me very aware it gave me a shake-up, a spring cleaning of my priorities, that I wanted to live more deeply, boldly, authentically. And it also awakened me that I didn't want to wait to have a family. I wanted to start to have a family sooner. And so my dad's death is why my son is here. And weirdly enough, my son was born on August 27th to the day, 4 years after my dad died on August 27th. 4 years before my dad's death day is my son's birthday, which I think is kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. Now, I love this concept, obviously, of near-life experiences, what you call it, being life adjacent. I like that kind of vocabulary of talking about it, because we live in these crazy times where it seems like most of us are on autopilot, and we are living these distracted, not purpose-filled lives. We're not being present in the moment. Now, you mentioned that it was the poignant part, the sad part. You lost your father, and that was kind of your wake-up call from you realizing you were living this near life before that. But it's safe to say that in reading through your biography, you had a very, what from the outside would be deemed in all material ways and the ways culture values things, a very successful, and one might even say purpose-filled life. So take us through that, because you had this high-flying career, and then at some point, perhaps it was your father's death, at some point everything changed for you, didn't it? Talk us through what you were doing before all this.
I mean, I wasn't entirely not doing things correctly, but enough things that I wasn't doing correctly. I was so career focused. You know,
Mm,
I was in, and I write about this in the book, and I was living what they call beast mode, you know, where
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
so much about that it swings around. Anything in an extreme is not good. And I was like very career focused, and I didn't have balance in that. And in the book, I write about the difference between beast mode and best mode.
Mm,
And in fact, one of the top regrets of the dying is I wish I didn't work so hard. I wish I had, and another one is I wish that I had allowed myself to have more joy. I wish that I had spent more time with my loved ones. And if you're working really, really hard, you could get, I was getting fulfillment. I mean, I actually had quit my job in advertising to pursue my passion, which was to write books. And when I was in advertising, boy, that was definitely beast mode. We used to have this joke about one of my bosses in an advertising agency. We used to say that he said, our joke, if you don't come in on Saturday, don't bother coming in on Sunday, because we were working weekends so much.
yeah. Yeah.
But, and I thought when I quit my advertising job to be an author, that it would be a calmer life, but it's still a busy life trying to succeed as an author. You're just like, at least you're doing something where your passion is, but you can overdo it. And that's why I've also written about in my book, Your To Die For Life, and in other places too, that if you want to have a happy life, you can't just follow a to-do list, because a to-do list is all about productivity. But productivity does not necessarily give you your best life. You have to have
Yeah.
what I call a to-die list. You have to not only have a to-do list because you need to get things done, you need to be practical, but you need a to-die list, which is daily reminders of who you want to be. It's about designing your life. A to-do list is about designing your day, and a to-die list is about designing your life and reminding yourself of the things that matter most, which includes like core values, and I can get into this more, but that's like my brief, quickie summary of things.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I'm fascinated by this. I think a lot of our listeners can relate to the beast mode versus best mode and that idea of being on my deathbed and what will my regrets be.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be, I wish I'd worked harder at the job I was employed in, especially maybe if you're an entrepreneur, that changes things a little bit. But for most of us, like you said, you were working in an ad agency, you were in this beast mode, and my life paralyzed that. My life parallels that very closely. I was a tech sales guy for 22 years with the same company. I was very good at it, and I was 100% in beast mode to the point to the detriment of my relationships with my family, certainly my health. I ended up in my mid 40s as out of shape and sick as I've ever been in my life. And it caused this complete transformation for me. So somewhere around 50th, I decided, you know what? I am going to quote unquote retire and follow my passion. My passion is health and wellness because I had this incredible health turnaround in my late 40s, early 50s. In the 50s, I found myself in the best shape I'd ever been in my life. I was so excited and passionate about that. I felt called and purpose driven for the first time really in my entire life. And I tell people, when people are asking me, some of my ex and coworkers, they'll say, well, hey, how's retired life treating you? And I said, well, I work twice as hard for half the money, but other than that, it is fantastic because I wake up every morning on fire, passion filled, and all of these things like you're talking about. I'm living this purpose led life now, whereas before I was, I don't want to talk bad about that time in my life because it certainly provided for me, for my family, and I'm sure I learned a lot of things there, but I wasn't living in alignment with my true self, and I just didn't know it. It was my baseline, right? So I think a lot of us can get caught up in that corporate beast mode. It's very easy to do. But at the end of my life, yeah, I'm not going to look back and say, geez, I wish I sold more cloud technology to
Right?
those enterprise customers. That's not,
Yes.
it's not what I'm going to hope at the end of my life. So I really want to pick this apart because I really like this idea of death awareness
Yeah.
and this idea of a to die list. And it's almost this working backwards, right?
Oh,
So
yes.
you talk a lot about focusing on the end and that being a healthy, joyful
Very.
thing to do.
Yes.
Because most of us, like you said, we have death terror. I don't want to die. And of course, in our age bracket, now we have elderly parents and
Oh, yeah.
it's hitting a little closer to home for us, right?
Yeah.
If we're lucky enough to still have parents. So talk to us about how would I why would I
I'm
embrace
going to
death
lure you
awareness? And
in. I'm going to lure you into
yeah,
this.
lure me in. I'm ready. Yeah, what's
Well,
happening
I
here?
write with humor, so that helps, to make
That does
to
help.
kind of
Yes.
ease some of the terror a little bit. But okay, so I believe that mortality awareness isn't morbid, it's motivating because mortality awareness creates urgency and urgency creates action, right? So a lot of us wait for a deadline, to get something done. Well,
Sure.
death is like the ultimate deadline. And it's one you can't
Yeah.
really futz around with. It's like it's there, you can't keep asking for extensions, but we live like we have like an extra 700 years in a drawer somewhere, or we could just pull it out later, but it's not there. So we have to wake
Right.
up to it. So what I've done is after my dad passed away and I gave his eulogy, I came up this assignment to write my own eulogy and think about how I wanted my life to be at the very end when I'm on my deathbed. And interestingly enough, I love the philosopher Aristotle. And in fact, I named my son after him, but I didn't go all out and call him Aristotle. I called him Ari as a wink to
There you go. Yeah.
Aristotle because I love his philosophy so much. So Aristotle says, and he, if people know, if your listeners aren't familiar with Aristotle, they might be familiar with Stoicism. And so there's, Aristotle, though he's my favorite out of all the Stoics. So Aristotle said that you should begin every project with the ends in mind, everything from the small, like a bake sale, to the large, like that gigantic project called your life, and figure out what is the end goal that you want for this. And so he also said that when it comes to the end goal for your life, that we all have the same end goal, no matter who you are, where you're from, Timbuktu, Toledo, Toronto, we all have the same goal for our lives. And that is to learn lessons that help us to become our best possible selves. Now, he also said that the reason why a lot of people are unhappy is because they have the wrong end goal for their life. They think it's to become the richest person on the planet, the
Yeah.
sexiest girl on the planet, the most loved, have the most sex, have the most status, the most Instagram followers. And if you think of these as your end goal for life, you are chasing the wrong rabbits. And when you get to the end, when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be, as I say, good in deathbed. So if you want to be good in deathbed, you have to think about learning lessons that help you to grow into your best possible self and embracing strong core values. So, and then you reverse engineer. You after you write your eulogy, and in my book, You're to Die for Life, I know people might think I don't want to write my eulogy. That's going to give them the creepy crawlies. So I took the creepy crawlies out because I give everybody this like template, like Mad Libs. It's a little
Yeah.
like
Uh-huh.
Mad Libs. You fill in the blanks.
Fill in the blanks.
So
Yeah.
it's very easy to write your eulogy. And I'm going to give your listeners a little spoiler alert that a lot of the blanks, not all of them, but a lot of the blanks have to do with core values. Because if you want to get to the end of your life and if you want to be good in deathbed, you have to embrace strong core values because that's what's going to help you to become your best possible self. And that's how you're going to feel like you're going to want to give yourself a 10-star Yelp review for your life at the end. You're like, I did good.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
help people to figure out what those core values are. And that's what helps you to write your to die list. So, and I explain this all in more detail in my book, but
Sure.
the
Sure.
good
Yeah.
little get you going, tools.
That does get me going. In fact, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, I'm afraid that so many of us are walking around to ourselves what we want and what our core values really are. So when you say things like, hey, what I'm helping these people do is not just think of the end and it's kind of, okay, well, what do I want to be like then? How do I want to remember myself? How do I structure my life so I give myself a 10-star review at the end? But how do I learn these lessons and how do I step into my authentic self? How do I know what my core values are? And then how do I live in alignment with those?
Mm.
So we've got some time here without deep diving or going through the entire book. Can you give us some tips on somebody who's like, I'm not really sure what my core values are? How might we begin to really identify those? And then now that I've identified these core values, what I do with them.
Okay.
How does that change my action day to day or my habits?
Okay. I love this part. So I
This is the good stuff. Yeah, let's go.
forever. Uh,
Yeah.
so the first thing that I want to say to people is that in the book, I have prompts to help you to figure out what your core values are. But because I understand that some people get like, writer's block around things like this,
Hmm.
I do have my recommended 7 core values. And I've come up with them because I reverse engineered the top regrets of the dying, what death doulas say that people regret when they're on their deathbeds. And I thought, how do you make sure you don't have these regrets? And sure enough, they're related to core values. And if you embrace these core values, they're sort of like regret resistant sealants that you can smother all over your life and you'll be, as I say, good in deathbed. So these 7 core values are, and they're in alphabetical order, so they're easy. First one is A, authentic. You have to choose to be true to yourself, express yourself as yourself, live an authentic life. B is brave, a big one. You know, get out
Hmm.
of that comfort zone. A lot of the things that when you're on your deathbed, you'll be really proud of are times when you did the brave, bold thing. C is curious. Okay. Now you might be curious why I'm saying curious. This is a big one. Remember, I said that we're here to learn lessons to help us grow into our best possible selves. You have to be curious. You have to be, when you're faced with a pattern, like one of those like challenging patterns, like, why does this keep happening to me? You have to be curious as to why, and you have to want to grow and curious what you can do more. Curious, what is my authentic self? Curiosity is a very important core value to embrace. And it also keeps you from being bored. D is discerning. Very, very important. These are all important. These are my favorites. Now, why discerning? Because I think one of the biggest problems people have when it comes to changing their lives is they say, oh, I don't really have time for this. I don't have time. I didn't have time to do X, Y, or Z. Well, that's sort of like the adult equivalent of the dog ate my homework. I don't have
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
But
it sure
really,
is.
right? But really, what it means
Yes.
is I'm not making this a big enough priority.
Right on.
Find
Yeah.
time. And that happens even with beast mode. Like, oh, I'm too busy doing my work thing. I
Hmm.
don't have time to spend with my children. Come on. You have to figure it out. And that is if you embrace the core value of discerning, then you get better at getting rid of the crap and clutter in your life. And in my book, I help people to do a life audit to help them to be more discerning and figure out what is the crap and clutter that's taking up too much time. E is empathic love. I called it empathic love because I wanted to say love, but it didn't go in my alphabetical order. So I needed an E word.
Right.
I was really lucky because I thought empathic love is even better than love because I also didn't want love to be viewed as like romantic love. And really, empathic love is a gentle nudge of what makes for the best love, which is where you're really listening and you're empathic, you care, you want to understand, you're awake to that person and wanting to view them for who they are and love them through it. So, empathic love, very important. Having meaningful relationships, wildly important. F is fun because remember, I
Mm.
confessed my beast mode. And I'm not the only one. I mean, we live in a very productivity obsessed culture. We worship
Sure do.
product.
Yes, we do.
So we need to have fun. So that's a core value. So I think we need more
Hmm.
fun in our lives. And then G is gratitude. We need to appreciate
Oh, I love
what
it.
we have. And
Yeah.
when you love what you have more energy to do everything else. And it puts you in a better frame of mind for that. There's lots of studies about this. So that's my starter kit of 7 core values. So if somebody is like, I don't know what my core values are, if you embrace these 7, you would be definitely you'd be maximizing joy and minimizing regret.
Hey there, Coach Kevin here. Quick question. What if the real reason you can't lose fat is because you're not eating enough? Yeah, I know. Sounds backwards, right? But I see it all the time. There are so many of y'all who have dieted yourselves into a metabolic dumpster fire. You're eating like birds, working out like maniacs, and the scale, not budging. If that's you, if you've been stuck on the go on a diet, lose some weight, then gain it all back a month or two later hamster wheel, I want to invite you to book a free discovery call with us. No pressure, no gimmicks, just a real conversation to see if our one-on-one coaching is the right fit to help you finally fix your metabolism and get off the diet roller coaster once and for all. Hit the link in the show notes to grab your spot. Let's get you unstuck. 100%. I love that. Authentic, brave, curious, discerning, empathetic, love, fun, and gratitude. I think we would all want more of that in our lives. So now here's the $1 million question. If I want to adopt those and I look at my life and I'm, well, I don't know. I don't feel very brave. I'm not very curious. Life doesn't seem very fun right now. What's my roadmap or blueprint for now starting out on this path, this journey of becoming this purpose-driven, authentic, brave, curious, discerning, loving, fun, gratitude-filled human being?
You got it. I write about this also in the book. This is how you create your to-die list. Okay. So Frank Sinatra sang, "Doobie doobie doo." You remember that song?
I sure did. Yes, I do.
Frank Sinatra was a great crooner, but he was a backwards personal development person, because instead of singing do, be, we should all be singing be, do, because we have to focus on who we want to be able to do the right things. And there's a reason for this, that identity is your destiny. Who you think you are is what will determine what you do. Identity is the puppet master of your habits. And for this reason, there's a whole area of psychology about this that promotes identity-based habits. That if you own an identity, first and foremost, then you're more likely to do the positive, well, in the case of positive identity, positive habits associated with it. For example, we already do this even if we're unconscious about it. If you think that you're sloppy, you're going to do the habits of a sloppy person. If you think that you're neat, you're going to do the habits of a neat person. And if we walk around and we think, I deserve good friends, I deserve, lots of happiness. But are you owning the identity of somebody who can create that life? Are you being kind? Are you being empathic? Are you being a good listener? Are you being patient? Are you being, whatever the core value is? So when you remind yourself that that core value is important to you, and then you attach it to a habit, you're more likely to do it. So that's why the to-die list is built with the following template. I am, and so I do. And something really wonderful happens when you attach the core value to it. It creates what's called cognitive dissonance if you don't do the habit, because you're like, wait a minute, I do value loving and I'm not acting that way. And with this cognitive dissonance, then you're more likely to do it. So for example, I have a very good friend, Danielle, and I live here in New York and she lives in Connecticut, but I don't drive a car. I'm like some kind of stereotype of a woman from that TV show, Sex and the City, where my driver's license expired and with it came my learning and knowing how to drive. So I just don't drive it.
Right.
So Danielle was having a birthday party in Connecticut. And I thought, oh, how am I going to get to Connecticut? And again, my first default thing is like, oh, I don't know. I guess I don't drive. I guess I can't go to a birthday party. That was my first thought. And then because I write my to-die list, I wrote down, I am a loving person. And so I find a way to get to Danielle's birthday party in Connecticut. Reminding myself of my core value helped to nudge me to be more empathically loving and show up. And I also value at this point, after writing the book, even more than ever, I totally value having deep, meaningful relationships, because that really does help you to live your best life. And so I found a way to get to her birthday party in Connecticut. This is the power of identity-based statements.
I like that. I like the progression we're taking here, right? We're identifying these core values that are important to us, and then that's driving our action. We're becoming that, like you said, how did you say it? Identity becomes your destiny. So
Mhm.
as I practice these habits that we talked about, living in alignment, and you'd call that cognitive dissonance when we're not, and that can help us course correct as we go. So I guess step one, know what's important to you. And then step two, how do you act that out? How do you become that? And I'd like this idea of neuroplasticity, of in order to affect change, it really happens with the mind first and my thoughts. So are these core values important to me? If so, then this, right? I'm going to act as somebody even before, as I'm becoming that. I am that, ahead of that in my head, sort of thing. I know it sounds a little woo woo to some people, but that is very powerful. What you're talking about there, knowing that core value, and then having the actions attached to that, or the habits attached to that become your reality. So, Karen, where does purpose fit into all of this? Because I feel like along with these core values, I feel like a lot of people are just drifting. They're not living a purpose-led life. They don't know why they're here and what to do with that. Where does that fit into this framework of, say, mortality awareness and all of that?
Okay, all of this goes together
Sure.
amazingly well, like when you start to see that how everything works like a big interconnected thing. Your to die list, what I want people to do is after they write their eulogies, if they write it, and the book still works, even if you don't write your eulogy, but you think about the life that you want for yourself. You write every morning, you write at the top of a page of paper. I suggest people keep a journal. Who do I need to become to get everything I want in my life? And then you write that question above and you think backwards, again, reverse engineer, what core values will help you to get there? And you can even look at present goals, not even the end of your life goals, present goals. Who do I need to become to write that novel? Who do I need to become to run this marathon? Who do I need to become to stop fighting with my partner or child? Who do I need to become? And you write that down. And then you write down the core value. And then you think of a habit that could accompany it. So I am patient, and so I talk in a more patient way. I am a good listener, so I seek to understand rather than to be understood, and you write that down on your list. So it reminds you of who you want, of designing your life, not just your day. And then you let that influence your day. And you can look at a lot of your problems in your life and work backwards. And there's usually a core value as the answer for it. Why do I keep having this problem? What core value would solve it? Write it down. Now, a lot of people are going to have resistance with a core value that they feel like, I don't know, that's not really me yet. So I have this thing that I have people to do, which is they write down, I used to not be brave. The old me used to not be brave, but the new me is brave. The old me used to be whatever the other quality is, but the new me is this. And you start to reframe things in that way. So, and then I also believe that one of the biggest joys of life is to seek out the purpose in your pain, to learn the lessons, as Aristotle would say, learn the lessons that help you to grow into your highest potential self. So if you aren't there at your core value yet, you know that that's okay. That's what you're here for, to learn the lessons that help you to become a better you. So you just reframe everything in that way, and you see it as a game and a challenge to become that.
I like that description of purpose. I think all of us can identify with my purpose here, then, the way you're saying it is back to that statement. You've said it several times, to learn the lessons to help me be my best self, to learn
Yes.
the lessons to help me live in alignment with my core values, to understand them and to walk them out every single day, knowing that I'm not chasing perfection, because that's not a real thing anyway, but that it's a journey. I meet myself with grace. And when I fall short, I hold myself accountable, but again, with loving grace. And and my purpose is to show up in that every day, to to try to become this best version of myself. And I just do feel like a lot of us sort of drift. I think that they don't understand. And one of the ways I like to look at it is what lights you up, what gives you joy. And I don't mean happiness, because you had mentioned, hey, sex and cars and money and power and fame and whatever, right? Clicks or likes or follows. All those things are things we chase, and they bring momentary happiness for some of us. But there's this soul-filled joy that's something different. What is that? And maybe you've lost it. Maybe you had it when you were a kid and you don't have it now, or you've forgotten it. But I think that discovering that, stepping into that, owning that, and then sharing it.
I
Share that with the world.
agree with you. I'm so aligned right now with everything you're saying. In the book, I know I keep saying that,
That's all right.
but I
Yeah.
mean, this book is what I call my legacy project. This book has everything. I just want everybody, I wish I could just like tell everybody. So I'm glad I'm on your podcast because I believe in everything in this. But in the book, I have a whole chapter about whether or not you believe you have a soul. And even if you don't, what your belief system is about your core self. And that we need to take time to listen to this, whatever you want to call it. I'm kind of open to calling it either. I say that I'm what I call spiritual logical, because part of me believes in the soul, but then I'm very psychologically driven, and part of me just thinks, oh, wait, that's the core self. But it doesn't even matter. But you have to take time to listen to that. And because we live in such a productivity obsessed world, we don't have that much time for silence and for contemplation. And a lot of people meditate, but I even feel like you could take time to contemplate, not just meditate, and to journal, to get in touch with who that soul, that core self part of you is, and to live a life that's you-ier. The you-ier you are, the happier you will be, is one of my beliefs. And I have a lot of suggestions on how to make sure that you're listening to that inner you. And if you've lost touch with it, I have suggestions for how to get back in touch, because, and that's why one of my core values, very first one, is
Authenticity. Yeah.
yeah,
Right back to that.
because the less people live for who that you is inside of them, soul, core self, doesn't matter what you call it, just that you take time to listen to it. If you're not, something's going to feel off. And you're not going to be able to make good choices. You're not going to be picking the people that are meaningful relationships, meaningful work. That's really where the meaning comes from.
So when I hear you talk about the UE and the soul and this inner self, where does spirituality fit into this framework? I don't know how we can have a discussion about your to die for life and death awareness without talking about spirituality or something bigger than ourselves, and maybe even an afterlife, right? How does all that fit into this framework, or does it? Is this
Oh,
more of
it
a
does.
secular approach and it's
No,
open
it isn't.
to? Okay,
But I wanted to make the book. I know some people there's a spectrum of spiritual to psychological, and I speak
sure.
to all of that in the book. I don't take a team, and I say, if you're spiritual, this is your lens, and if you're psychological, this is your lens. I wanted the book to help people no matter which end of that spectrum that they are on. But, and I do even talk about, if you believe, because it's a book about death, I even talk about, what do you think comes after death? Why do you think you're
Mhm.
here? I have a whole area where I go into that, but I stay open-minded. If you're very spiritual, you'll find something in it. And if you're very psychological, you'll find something in it. But I do believe that we're here to look, the purpose of your life is to find and do the purpose of your life. And
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
don't feel like you have meaning and purpose in your life will feel meh, you know. And it can't just be your job. There's a couple of different people that talk about this. There's Aristotle actually talks about it, and he says that you need to have your specific function, the thing that only you can do and you can do well. And Carl Jung has this very interesting philosophy. He says that you need to have a high level spiritual quest, something that your soul feels like is a driving force to drive you towards. And if you don't have a high level spiritual quest, you're going to develop a low level spiritual quest. in the form of drama,
Oh, yeah.
conflict, because your soul needs something that it feels like it has this urge to feel like that's here for a reason. And so this is why sometimes people develop low-level spiritual quests in the form of toxic relationships. There's all kinds of reasons people can have toxic relationships, but right now I'm just giving it the Carl Jung slant, that
Hmm.
you need something. Oh, I have something very important in my life right now, even if it's something terrible, even if it's a low level spiritual quest. And one of Carl Jung's belief is if you want to release low level spiritual quests, then you need to find a higher level spiritual quest, a purpose and meaning in your life to focus on. So, which I think, I was never in Alcoholics Anonymous, but now I'm wondering, with having no qualifications for it, this is just a first time thought in my mind, if that's some of what they do with AA to help you to let go of drinking, is don't they say you have to surrender? I wonder if there's something to that. And this is a first time thought that I'm just letting roam around wild in this interview, but
Sure. Yeah. Well, I have limited experience here as well, but there is, I think the very first tenet is, hey, we submit to a higher power. We are powerless. And so we submit all to a higher power. But yeah, as you're talking about this higher level spiritual quest, that resonates strongly with me. I feel like we're wired to worship. And if we don't worship God, in my case, in the context of, say, Western Christianity, but if we don't have the spiritual sense of worship, we're going to worship something. And again, it could be relationships, it could be power, it could
yes,
be work, it could be, it could be something, money and status and all these different things, celebrities.
yeah,
We're just wired to worship something. And when I think with the way you're describing it, it's very beautiful. We can have this low level, what's called spiritual quest, or we can have this higher level spiritual quest. And maybe part of your work is understanding what kind of, what are you worshiping? Where are you? And again, with love and without judgment. This is where I am today. It's a beautiful thing. I'm a beautiful being right now where I am, but I'm on this journey. I'm on this path. I'm working to progress. And I want to, what did you say? I want to learn these lessons to grow into my best self,
right.
right? So,
By the way, I
absolutely love it.
love what you're saying about worship. And that's exactly the Carl Jungian thing. That's how we
Hmm.
wind up worshiping the wrong things.
Sure.
So
Right.
we're worshiping money instead of,
Hmm.
that's a low level spiritual quest,
Sure is.
instead
Yeah.
of looking for a higher level, more meaningful spiritual quest.
Right.
That really resonates with me. So thank you for sharing that. I love
Sure. Absolutely. Well, Karen, let's finish here. You are a behavior change expert. We've been dancing around this, I guess, talking about changing our behavior, right? By understanding our values and then understanding how we might change. Why is it so hard to change behavior? Why would somebody need the title of being a behavior change expert?
that.
And the reason is because it's so darn hard. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'm going to tell you something that only showed up while doing these interviews because I realized that not only do people fear death, they fear change.
Sure do, don't they? Yeah.
Part of the reason, if death awakens in you, oh my God, now I have to do something to change my life. If I make that to face,
Yeah. Now I have two terrors instead of one, right?
I
Yeah.
kind of realized that as I was talking about the book, because the book is about how to change your life using
Hmm.
mortality awareness as a kick in the tush.
Right.
So people are afraid of change. People cling to the familiar, the comfort zone, even if their comfort zone is discomfort. So it's
Yeah.
just easier. They wait till there's something like a pain, like death, where the pain of not changing becomes greater than the pain of change. And
Yeah.
so, but there's a way you can ease yourself into this by, first of all, making change fun, making change
Mhm.
feel like it's worth it, to remind yourself of the end goal. If you keep reminding yourself, and that's where having the eulogy helps you to keep your eye on the prize rather than the thing that you're afraid of. So that's the other reason why writing a eulogy, and that's why people write mission statements and have mantras and all of those things, because it helps. I believe that people have to do what I call a stop and swap. Okay. And let me explain it to you. before we began, I told you that I have one good dog and one bad dog.
Yeah.
And so this also works on training dogs, not just humans, ourselves. But if you want to get your dog to stop chewing on your shoe, the dog has this urge to chew. So if you just say, stop chewing on my shoe, and you take away the shoe, the dog will go back to find the shoe again. So you can't just do a stop. You have to do a stop and swap because there's this urge, must chew on something. So you have to swap in something else. Here's a healthy thing to chew on, a bone. Well, in our lives, if we say, stop doing this, we still have the urge to chew on something. So you have to swap in something else, something that's a positive thing, a positive habit, or a positive thought, a reframe. You can reframe something. So if you think, like, nobody likes me, and you want to try to stop that thought, you have to swap in the right people like me. So if you want to stop a behavior or a negative thought, any kind of negative programming, you have to not only stop it, you have to swap it. But it's a helpful one for people to think about.
That is a helpful one. And I think to your point, very often we don't realize it, but those negative behaviors very often are serving us in some way. They're not serving us in a healthy
That's
way,
true.
obviously. But in my world, in the nutrition field and health and wellness, we find our emotional eaters that are gravitated. They're not gravitated toward kale salads. That's not what they're, when they're sad and depressed and anxious and overwhelmed. That's not what they're reaching for, right? And just that sort of the understanding and people that stay in abusive relationships, for example, that is serving something. But
And it's a
if we can,
maladaptive
as
coping mechanism.
it is a
Yeah,
maladaptive coping mechanism, yes. But if we can stop that behavior, it's not just enough to say stop that. But stop it now. What do I replace it with? What do I substitute there? Yeah, I think that's interesting. And it's to me, I'm just fascinated by this whole idea of behavioral change. I think you would agree that certainly you had said, hey, know your why, know your purpose, go back to your values. That's going to be important. And then would you agree that as opposed to me wholesale trying to just change everything tomorrow, or I've listened to this podcast, I'm going to change everything in my life. I got it. Rather, I take this journey of one small step at a time, right? This very small progressive. Is that fair?
that is. But I'm going to tell you something that has to do with emotional eating that will help your viewers
Sure.
that care about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is the joy of adopting a a couple of favorite core values. Because here's a story, it's a quick one. After my son was born, I gained a lot of weight. I had my pregnancy weight, but I never lost it really for a while. And I used to I kept calling it my pregnancy weight, but my son was like 2 or 3 years old. So at a certain point, I knew it wasn't pregnancy weight. It was my I eat too much crappy food weight. And I was eating what he was eating, the pizza and the macaroni and cheese and the cheddar cheese goldfish and everything. So I was on the phone one day and I was talking to my publisher about one of the books that we were doing, and it had images in it, photographs and illustrations. And in the comp version of the book they showed me, I could see some of the images showing through the paper. It was too thin. So I was talking with the publisher about, can we get a thicker piece of paper, a little toothier? And I realized as I was doing this that I'm a pretty discerning person. This is even how I came up with the core value of discerning. I thought I care so much about like the paper and the images aren't going through. I have the core value of discerning. And then after I got off the call, I was like looking at the food and I was thinking, a discerning person would not eat macaroni and cheese and cheddar cheese goldfish. And I thought to myself, I value the core value of discerning, and embracing the core value of discerning, owning my identity as someone who's discerning, created, as I mentioned before, the concept of cognitive dissonance, this conflict in me. I am a discerning person, and so I eat healthy foods. I eat in a discerning way. Here's the beauty of core values. When the more you own a core value, it has a positive ripple effect into other areas of your life. If you go, I am discerning, then you shop better, you spend money differently, and you also spend your time differently. You're more careful about the people you let in. Core values have this beautiful ripple effect in your life. When you start embracing them, it can improve other areas of your life, not just the area that you were originally choosing that core value to focus on to improve. It creates a ripple effect.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think that as you pour into and own these core values, it's going to have an impact throughout your whole life. And I think that's what you want for us, right? We're to become these our self-actualized selves, are these
Yes.
to lead this purposeful, fulfilling life. And I love the concept again, going back to working from the end back. It's something I really haven't considered. I know that in Eastern philosophy, there's some of that, and I've dabbled with a little bit of that, but just this concept of writing your own eulogy and working back with these, this death awareness. Absolutely love it. Well, Karen, as we are wrapping up here, tell people, where can they learn more about you? Where can they get the book? How can they potentially work with you? Where do you want to send folks?
Oh, thank you. Well, my name is Karen Salmansohn, and everybody mangles it. They're always going Salmonson. So I'm always saying, not salmon, not salmon. So my website is notsalmon.com. My Instagram, my Facebook, even I have a Substack, and that's not salmon, although the name of it is The Stand-Up Philosopher, because I like to merge humor with philosophy and psychology and all of that. And then my book is called You're to Die for Life, and it's available wherever books are sold. But if you go to my website, you're to die for life.com, I have a whole website just for the book and my mortality awareness concepts. If you buy the book and you type in the invoice number from the book, people get a $97 free value gift, a workshop called It's Never Too Late to Rejigger Your Life, which I think your audience might appreciate. So that's the whole everything of where to find me. And I also do coaching and a little bit of everything as a behavioral change expert.
Okay, like I said before we hit record, this is probably going to come out late June. This book actually comes out, what do we say, late July? Is that right?
Yeah,
What's
July
your release date?
22nd. Yes.
July 22nd. So if you're listening to this when it releases, definitely go check out yourtodieforlife.com. And folks, I will throw links to all of Karen's social media, her websites, the book, all of that in the show notes. You guys can find that whatever app you're listening to this on, or of course over on our website. But make sure you check it out. The book again is called You're to Die for Life: How to Maximize Joy and Minimize Regret Before Your Time Runs Out. So definitely check that out. Karen, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was such a pleasure having this very fun, very enlightening conversation with you. I encourage you to keep up the great work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. I loved talking with you. And I'm going to remember your idea about what we worship. I thought that was brilliant.
Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you are interested in checking out one of our professionally designed, age-appropriate functional strength training programs, I will throw a link to those in the show notes for this episode. You can find that on whatever app you're listening to this on, or head over to silveredgefitness.com/352. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in two important ways. The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong. I did hear a little yip in the background. Yeah.
There's a little.
Oh, there. Oh, he's not mean. He's not bad. Look at
Don't
him.
let his little sweet face fool you. He's full of mischief.